Tell me how WOWorks came into the picture.
Oh, man, I'm not sure that's that exciting.
I do a lot of research on my food stuff. When you say better quality ingredients, what does that look like?
It is trying to find ingredients that are as close to their natural state. Most of U.S. consumers, they don't realize how this food is grown sometimes. The math is much better. If you add labor and raw materials together, it's still a lower food cost.
Let's address the big elephant in the room. You're natural, you don't use antibiotics. I walk into your restaurant, how much more am I paying for your food versus the next guy down the road?
The goal is to get everything into the 20s, which we think we can do.
Oh, wow. Welcome to another episode of TechBite. Today we have Kelly Roddy from WOWorks. And we're going to share their story, their success rate, where they came from, how they see things in the industry. They have a very unique proposition to the market. We're going to drill down and talk about what makes WOWorks different than your traditional restaurants. Kelly, thanks for being here. So
awesome. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit more about you. Where do you come from?
Oh, man, I'm not sure that's that exciting, but I guess I grew up in the world of retail. I started my career with Walmart a million years ago. It's a great place to train. I mean, amazing training programs. You learn retail, you learn food cost, you learn how to lead people. You get a tremendous amount of responsibility at a really young age, and so it makes you grow up really fast and matures you in the business world for sure. Worked through a couple of other interesting jobs. I went actually from retail into the publishing world for a while. I was in
book publishing?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I worked for Scholastic Books. Then in grocery retail, working for H-E-B. And then entered the restaurant business in 2007. Even though, we were doing, I guess if you look at the grocery stores, there's several restaurants and food production areas within each of the grocery stores, and like a bakery or a deli, and those departments run very similar to a restaurant.
Sure.
They're very, very similar, and so because you're making product, you're merchandising it, you're promoting it, and so it transfers mostly more similarities than there are differences for sure into the restaurant industry, and so. But it was my first entrance into franchising, which is another dynamic completely, because you're running the restaurant business, but it's a franchising business, which is completely different. And so I learned a lot about franchising and the power of franchising as well. Started with Focus Brands. When Focus Brands was brand new, they owned Carvel, Cinnabon. They purchased Schlotzsky's. That's where I come in. When they buy Schlotzsky's, and then subsequently we bought several other brands and created the holding company of Focus Brands and created the share service model, etc. And so
you definitely know what you're doing when it comes to that stage, because you grew up essentially with Focus.
Yeah, I mean we figured it out, made a lot of mistakes, figured out. We tried it a lot of different things, a lot of different ways, and so you learn a lot, and so you sort of learn what to do and what not to do. And so when we thought about WOWorks, we thought about a lot of different things, the way we wanted to do it, but not only the approach we wanted to have regarding the types of menus and the type of food that we wanted to, pull together, but how to pull together a true shared service and get the most efficiency out of it. And we think we've done that. So
let's talk about WOWorks. How did that company start? What happened? How did you get involved? Tell me how WOWorks came into the picture. When did you join? Why? Run me through that part.
So, all right. So the background, I think, is first of all, our ethos was we're going to build something that is different than what everyone else is doing. Because a lot of people are cobbling up brands and taking the cost out, which is part of that shared service model, and putting a bunch of brands together. But we wanted to approach it quite differently because, one thing that we learned, probably starting around 2012, we were trying to figure out, we have all these brands that are incredibly decadent at Focus Brands. How do we make our food cleaner? Our guests were asking for, what's in the food, talking about the ingredients, and I think there's definitely a pull demand for that, right?
I would think that somebody that's going to like Cinnabon or Carvel,
Right.
like they're not asking, hey, is this healthy or?
You'd be surprised, right? Because people want to know what's in there. Because there's some things in our American like food supply chain that is just not great, right?
1,000%. We're going to talk so much about that.
So brands are looking for, how do we start taking things out of the food and still, because so much of that's to preserve the food, right?
Sure.
And so how do we take things out of the food and create better for you items? And so in some cases, like Cinnabon's a good example, sometimes you just treat yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a different occasion, and we all pick and choose to treat ourselves on
ice
occasion.
cream at 2:00 in the morning, that's normal.
Yeah, right. So as brands were looking to, make their menus, I guess, less dirty, if you will, I think we said we want to focus on building a company that is focused on clean food, right? And so SaladWorks was looking for, the private equity firm that owned SaladWorks was looking for, what are we going to do with this brand? They're investors. They're not restaurant people. They're not franchise people. And so we got together, and my idea was we could build a holding company of better for you brands and really focus on clean food and start building something very aspirational, which is build a holding company or portfolio company that is fast casual, franchised, and focused on the menu, ingredients, clean ingredients, and really do something different, because we believe that's what the future is for restaurants.
Yeah, so you keep bringing up this topic of better for you foods.
Mm-hmm.
So you've put a lot of emphasis, a lot of focus on this better ingredients, clean ingredients. So it started with SaladWorks, right? And then what's next? What happened?
So
how did that transition go into the next brand and the platform company and all of that?
Yeah, so immediately we started looking for other clean brands, and if you've been in the business a long time, you know what other brands are out there, and we started just reaching out to people, other salad concepts. We're like, okay, well, let's go with salads and let's try to build a larger salad company. We talked to everyone. So anyone you can think of that's in the salad business, we talked to them and to see if they were interested in joining forces. And we thought we were going to get some deals done with some other salad companies. We haven't, but we still want to in the future. And then you sort of look at like contiguous categories, right? We thought fruit, acai, smoothies, juices, those things were sort of the next concentric circle, right? And so we started looking at those type concepts. We talked to a lot of people. We came across Fruitable. We started talking to Fruitable, honestly, the second week that I was here. And then we were looking at other brands, talking to other brands, and then obviously at spring of 2020, what happened is we all just hunkered down and we made sure we took care of our franchisees and tried to help them, preserve cash and get through the pandemic. So we stopped for about 6 months on the acquisition front, but immediately at the end of 2020 went back to work, and we found several brands that we were trying to bring into the portfolio, but we struck a deal with Garbanzo and Fruitable and brought them in later in 2020. So by the end of 2020, pandemic was still going on, but we brought those two into the fold, both of those brands at the end of 2020, and then formed WOWorks.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk about better for you food. What does that mean? When you say better quality ingredients, what does that look like?
So it is trying to find ingredients that are as close to their natural state as possible. So fruit is fruit and vegetables are vegetables. So in their natural state, they aren't come out of the ground with pesticides, and they don't come out of the ground, with all kinds of preservatives or anything like that. And so anything that is as close to its natural state as possible. A better example is always going to be like proteins that are injected with antibiotics or hormones, things like that. And we have choices, right? And I think most of the U.S. consumer, they don't realize how this food is grown sometimes.
Sure.
They're pumped full of hormones to make the chickens grow really fast. I mean, chickens don't become grown chickens in 3 weeks, normally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, but they, that's what they're eating, and so what we make a commitment that our chickens, no antibiotics ever, right? And so you want a more natural, and so they may not all be organic because there's not a big enough supply chain for everyone to have organic.
Sure.
Unless we completely change the way we do things here in America. But there's enough natural product. There's actually not enough for everyone to just have natural product. But we could change the way we do things here.
Sure, and you come from the grocery store, so you had mentioned that even if you wanted to buy organic, you can't because the grocery aisles just scoop all that supply.
That's right. The Whole Foods of the world and the HEBs of the world, they increase their sections of organic every year as much as they can because there's only so much available, and they go and buy entire fields. So like if someone's doing an organic strawberry field, they go to the farmer and they say, we want it all.
So they just buy the whole. They buy the farmer essentially.
Yeah.
They might as well. They own the farmer essentially at that stage because they've got such a massive turnover on that stuff that they just can't keep up.
Right, and they're big and they can do that, right? And so so you don't see a ton of organic restaurants, but you do see some restaurants that are attempting at least to, because there's plenty of like chicken being sold that in America by very, very well-known brands that aren't selling healthy food. They're selling really terrible ingredients, and so, but there are choices for sure. And so there's enough supply chain for brands our size to be able to play in this space for sure.
Do you think that's going to hold you back from growth?
No,
you're going to hit
a
supply issue?
No, because I think at the end of the day, our guest pulls a demand from us, right? So we call it a pull demand. We have a pull demand to our vendors, and I think there's more and more of a pull demand to them. So they've got, at the end of the day, and until the manufacturers get on board, then it's going to be difficult, right? But there's definitely enough supply for us to have a tremendous amount of growth right now. But that demand, I think, will have manufacturers, vendors, they'll do what they can to increase their supply because there's definitely a demand for it. But at the end of the day, when the paper straw thing was like happening, it's like brands our size, we're not going to be able to shift at the end of the day until the big guys like McDonald's or Subway, until they make a decision that they're going to go that way. It's difficult for the manufacturers to go that way.
Oh, I agree. Well, I think it all comes back to the consumer. If they're choosing that plastic over paper, then everybody's going to just go with plastic because that's what the consumers demand. But I don't think people know because they can't see it, they can't feel it. So you don't see the chicken with antibiotic, without antibiotic. They may taste the same, but at the end of the day, what's injected into that is what's silently causing all of these problems. And the health industry is just in such a bad shape, especially here in the U.S.
Right.
You travel overseas, Europe, elsewhere, things are completely different. You don't have this just constant barrage of eat, and you're eating 18 hours a day. And on my side, like if you go back probably 75 years, but if you go back 100 years, you probably ate once a day.
Yeah.
You didn't have a choice. You didn't have a McDonald's in every corner where you could just order food at 2 o'clock in the morning and it now just gets delivered to the house, right? So I think that convenience is pushing everybody, and obviously the obesity and all that stuff is playing a role into the whole food supply and people just not knowing and technically probably not even caring.
Yeah, but I think that that's shifting, right? And so I think that we'll see that that shift happen really with the new generation, right?
I agree. I do a lot of research on my food stuff, and I've almost stopped eating out entirely. And very rarely do I eat out because of that, because I just can't find good enough options that is just not junk food, you know?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
All right, let's shift over to unit economics. So everybody in a restaurant complains that, hey, we have high labor costs, we have thin margins, we have high food costs. I can't even begin to imagine what your food cost is.
So it's actually, we first of all, we're in really great categories, right? And so we don't have
What does that mean, great categories? Like, in what sense?
Because, I mean, we're taking like vegetables and fruit right out of the ground, like into our cases. So there's not a ton of manufacturing happening. The earth is the manufacturer, so
Sure.
So that helps. And then we do so much from scratch. And so if you buy sauces or seasonings and they come in a big gallon container, that's pretty expensive. There's probably some waste in there, but we're making things from scratch every day. So we have tremendous number of ingredients.
Wait. It just got worse. Now you have high labor costs. I'm sorry, you have high food costs, and now you added high labor costs on top of that. All right, let's keep going. This is getting better and better.
So the math, believe it or not, the math is much better. If you add labor and raw materials together, it's still a lower food cost, because these guys have labor. The guys who are manufacturing this stuff, they have labor, they have ingredients, they have packaging, they have shipping, and so they have to get it to you. So it actually is a lower cost to do it yourself. It is. The challenge is more finding the skilled labor. So if you're in a garbanzo and you're making pita fresh from scratch, I mean, you've got basically a chemistry lab back in the back, right? So it's flour and it's yeast and water, and the water has to be a certain temperature and the humidity has to be a certain temperature, and you proof it so it's all time, temperature, moisture, right? And so, but it takes a little skill. And so we can train people to do that, and you actually can teach people a new skill. That's an amazing thing, but it's finding people that have that ability is more difficult, and then finding people who want to learn that trade as well.
Sure.
Because it is a trade craft that you can learn and take to other places as well. So we can give that opportunity to people, but at the end of the day, that does actually improve the unit level economics.
Interesting. So you said, do you make your pita in-house?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what are 3 ingredients? Flour, water, and yeast?
Yeah, that's basically it. That's all you need.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So if you go to the grocery store and you look at the bread, it lasts for 2 months on the shelf, and it's got 35 ingredients in it.
Yeah. So if you look at one of the pitas in a garbanzo, it's not more than usually 15-20 minutes old, right? And so if it sits on the counter for 3 days, it's like loaded with mold, right? That's what it's supposed to do.
Exactly. So that's a funny story.
Yeah. And so if you go and you get pita at the grocery store or a tortilla at the grocery store, and they last for months, there's why. What is in that tortilla or that pita that's making it last that long, and we're putting that into our body. And I'm not a epidemiologist, but I don't know what that's doing to my body, and I'm pretty sure it's not great.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not coming into my body in the raw, natural state that it was in. And but our pitas and our tortillas will mold within 3 days. So but by the way, the guest maybe doesn't care, but they do care about the taste and the flavor. So you can have. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to have a great menu item, right? If you don't have great food, that's the green fees to even being in the restaurant business.
Of course,
so we have great food.
Table stakes.
But then, absolutely. So if you have great food and it's delicious and it's better for you, then it's a home run. And the people who don't care about the ingredients, they come because of the flavor and the service and really the experience, right? Because the experience is the best marketing is the guest experience, right?
Sure.
And the people who do care, which is a lot more people, they will seek you out and they will find you. We try to tell our story, but it doesn't cut through all the noise and the clutter in the world. But the people who want to know will know.
All right, so that brings up another point. So I want to get back to unit economics, but this is very related. How do you even begin to educate? So I actually invested in a food company back in 2017-ish, and I thought I was going to change the world and I was going to make it super healthy. I was doing superfoods, etc. And oh my God, like it's just not possible. So how do you, again, what does that look like for you in terms of marketing, and how do you educate the consumer that, hey, this is better for you?
So,
or is that even part of your marketing, or are you just ignoring that? What does that marketing look like?
So you tell the story, right? And so if you go into Barbaritos, is a burrito brand that we have, and it's the better burrito, and how that's defined is, and we tell the story in store, so you'll see, things, the pictures on the wall talk about, coming from the farm to our restaurants and us putting it together. It doesn't cut through, but again, I don't think when you say fresh from scratch, people even understand what that means. They mean, in their mind, that means it came out of a box.
Oh yeah.
And that you put it in the oven, and your mom made an easy, like the Pillsbury, you put it in, you cut the stuff and you put it in the oven, and that's fresh from scratch. That's not fresh from scratch. Somebody had to put that together, right? And so that it doesn't. There's a ton of research that supports this, that the average guest doesn't understand what fresh from scratch is, because what their mom made is, when they baked, it was not fresh from scratch. It was par baked or whatever, it's basically one ingredient heated for 20 minutes or whatever. But today, Gen Alpha is turning 16 this year, and they're going to start driving, which also means they're going to get jobs, which means they enter the workforce, which means they're going to go out for lunch, and they are the children of millennials, right? And so their parents were, first of all, they're digital natives, so they have access to AI and the entire world from day one, and this is the world they live in. And their parents are millennials, so most of their parents are foodies, or at least think they're foodies, and their parents have been taking pictures of food and posting it their entire lives. So this generation, their parents are fairly educated. They're very educated about what they're putting into their body, and so they've learned about what's happening to our food supply chain. And my belief, and many others, is that they're going to seek it out, and they're going to seek to understand, and that they're already more educated than any of us were at their age, and they're become even more educated. And we all become more educated, right, all the time about this. So we're all learning about nutrition and the things we put into our body, and so it's pretty exciting, actually. But we saw, like, last quarter, Wendy's, Jack in the Box, McDonald's, everyone, like, down in traffic, and we believe that that's going to probably continue, right, as people depart things that aren't necessarily good for you and seek out things that are better for you. So maybe people are eating home more because they don't trust the restaurants. But over time, I think that we'll build their trust. We already have a huge following of people who seek clean food, but most people come because it's delicious,
sure,
right? And they're getting a good experience, right?
So are you taking market shares from these guys? Are your sales up?
It depends on the brand, right? It depends on the brand. So yes, about half of the brands are taking market share, and a couple of the brands are struggling, mostly because we think the geography and where they are. And so
yeah, because I guess
there's some certain states that people are leaving, and that the population growth is declining, and so I think that may be a headwinds for people in the Midwest particularly.
Interesting. All right, can we talk about the unit volumes a little bit? So, like, actually, we didn't even touch base on this. What are the brands you own? So
we own SaladWorks, Fruitable, Garbanzo Mediterranean Fresh, The Simple Greek, Barbaritos, and Zoop, now, which is now known as Z Eats.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so they're all fast casual. Let's talk some of the unit economics. What is it starting? Where does it? What's the highest? What's the lowest? What's the average across? I guess the entire portfolio.
The volumes are all over the place based on venue. So, we do really well in airports. So, you can have $3-4 million annual volumes in airports, universities because they're closed all summer and over the holidays. So you're really getting about 8 months a year. So the volumes are going to be much less, but in that 800,000 or 900,000, maybe $1 million range. But you only have so many months that you're open. On the street, it depends again. Are you in a really small community and you're doing $1 million, $1.1 million, or are you in a wealthy suburb and you're doing $3 million? So
you're anywhere from 1 to 3 million.
Yeah, and it depends. Again, it depends on where you are,
the brand and the location,
and the brand but the unit level economics work really well even at a lower volume in a small town if the rent's cheaper, the labor's a little cheaper, and so it's always math, right?
Sure.
And the economics, you don't need the same volumes in a small town in Georgia as you do if you're going to be, say, in California.
Sure. So let's talk. Let's address the big elephant in the room. You're natural, you don't use antibiotics. I walk into your restaurant, how much more am I paying for your food versus the next guy down the road?
So I think because of so much being fresh from scratch, it actually helps our food costs. So, we're lined up exactly with our competitors, right? And so
I'm not really paying more.
No, you're not.
Okay.
And so the margins are tough already in the food industry. We fight and work really hard every day to try to bring costs down because something's going to go up, right? There's always, one of my mentors taught me a long time ago that you focus on doing the right thing and you always focused on reducing costs because something is always happening, right? Whether it's a housing crisis or a pandemic or a tariff situation, there's always this whirlwind of things happening.
Sure.
And by the way, it's happening to everyone. And I can't control it. And so I should focus on the things that I can control. And that's what we do. So we can work with our vendors and we can work on our recipes. We can work on, operational efficiencies, things like that to improve unit level economics, or could be technology, something that will make things less expensive. Some things may make things more expensive, but it drives more guests into this restaurant. So it's always a delicate balance of where you're putting your money and what you're investing in.
So your price is about the same. What does that food cost look like in the restaurants?
So it varies.
Can you give me a range, like
sure.
percentage lowest?
Sure.
What's your lowest, what's your highest food cost across the portfolio?
So Bar Burritos has a very good food cost because, they're doing basically everything from scratch. And so you're going to be in the 20s, which is very good.
Like low, mid, high?
Mid, like 26, 27. You'll see
Fair
franchisees, especially the really high volume stores where you just have like no waste, incredible efficiency. You're probably going to see 25ish, up to 30 if it's at the end of the day, the model should be in the 20s. If you're a good operator, you'll get in the 20s. If you're not a good operator or you haven't done a good job training, the biggest issue in our industry is we have a lot of create your own, and we have a lot of young people who maybe don't really care. They put they don't follow the recipe. They put what they think they would want, right?
Sure.
So they might put extra cheese or extra protein on there, and so they're giving the guest more food than what the recipe calls for, but it also impacts the unit, food costs. And so the biggest issue is overportioning typically. And not following the recipes.
Yeah, well, we saw a big, massive social media backslash recently on burritos, and just give them a dirty look so they portion it right.
Yeah.
But
so if you're
I guess you're not the only one having that issue.
A 17-year-old kid and people look at you like, and they're staring at you.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Can I just get a little bit?"
Yeah.
They give them a little bit more, right?
Yeah, I'm always embarrassed to do that, but I guess I need to.
But guess who pays for it? The franchisee is the one that has paying the price for that. But But
So
honestly,
overportioning and waste seems to be the big driving factor.
Yeah,
but
but-
even 30% food cost, to me, that's very reasonable.
yeah. And so some of the brands are run like low 30s, but we're always working on how do we bring that cost down, and we
But is
accomplish
that okay? So we'll come back to that. But what's the highest food cost that you have across the portfolio? So
It'd be-
lowest is about 26,
Yeah,
27.
it'd be-
What's the
it'd be
highest?
Like low 30s.
Low 30s.
Yeah,
Okay,
low
gotcha.
30s.
What about
But the goal is to get everything into the 20s, which we think we can do.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. So we'll come back to that conversation. What about labor cost? What does that look like?
That's a market driven, that's a market driven thing. And
Is
so,
there a target that you aim at?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, we'd love to have, the crew labor to be in the teens. That would be great. And then we have a lot of owner operators, so the manager salary is whatever because the owner's typically the manager. So if you can run, 16, 17% crew labor, then everything above that could come back to you if you're the manager. If you're a multi-unit manager, then you're going to pay 5, 6% for your manager, and then everything else comes to you. And then it depends on, are you going to give your workers health care? That comes out of your pocket as well. So that varies tremendously.